All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's City Council study session for Monday, December 11th. Sorry for the delay. We had a technical difficulty in terms of getting the YouTube up and running. We have 4 agenda items for tonight. The first one, unfortunately, we have to postpone due to illness, so we will look to get it back on the calendar sometime in January. So moving on to the second agenda item, the monthly financial report for October. We have Finance Manager Kevin Engels here to discuss. Good evening, Mr. Engels.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Kevin Engels, Finance Manager for the city, and tonight we'll be discussing the October 2023 General Fund Financial Report. So we'll start with the General Fund revenues. Year to date for 2023, we have collected 87.6% of the budgeted amount. That compares to 83.3% from 2022, so we're a little ahead of that pace. This slide shows the breakdown of the various revenue categories. Just want to point out a couple of things on here. Sales and use tax, which is by far our largest revenue source. You'll notice there on the far right-hand column, it's up about 9%. That's nearly entirely due to the ballot measure passed last year. That was just about 9% increase. So we're not really seeing any growth this year. We don't think that's anything to be concerned about because last year was a record year, but just something to note. License and permits are down significantly from last year, but that's due to several large building permits that were issued last year for some redevelopment, and we're back to a more normal number this year. Investment earnings, we've talked about this a few times in the past. 2022 was showing a negative for the year. That's directly related to the rapid increase in interest rates, which temporarily devalued our investment portfolio. We had some unrealized losses in there. Once again, this year we're back to a more normal amount. On the miscellaneous revenue number, there are several one-time items that are listed below that we collected last year. We've not had any of those one-time items this year, so that's why that looks significantly lower. This slide shows sales and use tax by merchant category. You'll notice most are trending a little bit higher than last year. Once again, mostly due to that voter-approved increase in the rate. We'll move on to expenditures. So through October, we're at 77.5% of the budget that has been spent. That compares to 82.5% for last year. We also had about $3.1 million that we've transferred out for capital projects, and we'll see a little more detail on that here in a couple of slides. So here's the breakdown by department for the general fund expenditures. Not much new from the previous reports. Once again, wanted to point out public works and police. Those increases are directly related to that voter-approved sales tax increase because they're dedicated for roads and also alternative policing. So that's the spending that's offset by the revenues. A couple of one-time items that are listed down there below for last year as well. Debt service, we paid off the debt on this building and paid that off early, so that's why it's significantly higher last year. That was fully paid off, so that's not an ongoing expense for the future. This is a breakdown of expenditures by category. This gives a little better idea of some of the impacts of inflation. Personnel, we've had several increases, and we've also filled some vacancies. Those increases were to keep up with inflation for the employees. Commodities and contractual are both, those increases are both directly related to inflation as well. Capital spending is an internal charge. That's for vehicle replacement, mostly related to inflation again. And then you see our debt service that went down. And we talked about that on the last slide. So this slide shows the operating surplus or deficit. It compares revenue to expenditures. You'll see that this year we're a little over 6 million surplus year to date, and that's trending about the same as last year. We're just under 6 million for last year. Here's the more detail on the transfers we mentioned earlier. One small transfer in, that's for debt service, and then several transfers out, mostly for capital projects. The Dartmouth Bridge, and then for some other public improvement type projects. For a total of 3.1 million transferred out. This slide shows the fund balance composition. If you'll notice that far right column, the 2023 year-to-date balances. Total fund balance is 27.1 million. And then below that, we have some restricted items. We've got Tabor, that's a state restriction. Long-term asset reserve, was reserved by council for long-term asset replacement. ARPA funding, that's a federal grant that's been earmarked for projects that will happen mostly in 2024. We've got about 500,000 still left from the Broncos Stadium district refund that we got. They refunded us some of the tax collections that we made when the Broncos were sold. That is earmarked for youth activities. Some of it was spent this year, some will be spent next year. Then we've got unrestricted reserve. That's set at 16.7% or 2 months worth of revenues. And that amount, that percent reserve is set by council. Once you remove all the reserves and restrictions, we end up with an unassigned fund balance of 13.3 million. The next two slides, we're in here from last month. This is related to the EAF dissolution. Nothing has changed here, just one item to add. When we present the November financial report, we will have final numbers for you for assets that were transferred back to the city and any cash balance. There is going to be a cash balance that gets transferred to the city. We're working on those final numbers right now. The rest of the slides are for just specific sales tax areas. So that concludes the presentation. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Engels, thank you very much for your presentation. Mayor Pro Tem, you have the first question.
Thank you for the presentation. My question, can you go back to the fund balance composition slide? Just say this because the numbers at the bottom make sense to me, but on the 2023 year to date, I don't see the Tabor restricted, for example, the red bar in the graph.
Yeah, a couple of them are bunched up here because they're so small compared to the other numbers.
Okay.
Yeah,
but it's supposed to be 2.1, which would be the same as the previous year.
Yeah.
So maybe the graph got cut off on the top or something.
Possibly. I'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Number right.
I'm looking at the area sales tax. Area 7, what is outside city limits?
Sorry, let me get that for everybody. So outside city limits are businesses that aren't located within the city limits. They don't have a physical presence in the city, but they may sell things to citizens of the city, and so they owe us that tax that they collect whenever they sell a product to a resident.
Can you give me an example? Would it be like the golf course or?
Yeah, online retailers.
Well, I
And
thought
I
that
know
was
that's we have
different.
separated that out, sorry, you're correct.
Yeah, because that's area 14.
Yes. That's a good question.
Yeah,
don't
because
have
I
a
think
great
that's
answer
our
for that.
biggest tax base, or tax revenue generating, from what I could tell.
These tend to be fairly large companies. One example I can think of is software that maybe somebody's based, who knows, New York, but they sell a large software package to a business that's in Englewood.
So if a software company sold something to Swedish, for example?
Yes, if they were, if they were.
Okay, and they would have to charge our sales tax to them.
Correct, they're required to
Okay,
collect
I got
our
you now.
tax
All
rate,
right,
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I do have one question. Mr. Engels, you stated at the beginning that the sales tax increase is primarily driven by the passing the sales tax from last year. So are you saying that we are at zero growth for the year, or is there a 1 or 2%? Because zero growth does worry me. Obviously, our expenses are going up. So if we aren't growing as a city outside of just the tax increase that were approved by the voters last year, that would be a cause of concern for me.
It's a little too early to tell, but the last couple of months, we've seen zero growth.
Okay. So I think with the November or the December that's coming up, I'd like to get a little bit more detail about what that growth is.
Okay.
Thank you. Member Wright.
Do you track by chance how many businesses have opened and closed within the city during the year?
We do, and I believe that's a slide in here at the bottom. There, we've got new and closed for the various business areas.
Okay, so,
Most of these are Area 7 again, so they're not physically located here in the city.
okay, so the zero growth, could that be these numbers contributing to what Mayor Sierra?
It certainly could be related, yeah. It's fewer businesses that we're going to collect fewer taxes from, so sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from council? Seeing none, Mr. Engels, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item 3. This is the tree protection ordinance. We have Sustainability Coordinator Melissa Englund, Sustainability Chair Michael Chisolm, and Assistant City Forester Evan Anderson here present and discuss the memo from the Sustainability Commission regarding the tree protection ordinance. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Special hello to Councilmember Prang and Wright, because I haven't been able to meet you both yet. My name is Mel Englund. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Englewood. I'm also the Staff Liaison for the Sustainability Commission. I'm really here tonight just to do an introduction and some background on the tree protection ordinance discussion. When I'm done, I'll hand it over to Mike Chisolm. He's the Sustainability Commission Chair, and he's going to review the Commission's recommendations for a potential tree protection ordinance for the city. We also have Evan Anderson here. He's the City Urban Forester. If you all have any questions around trees, he's your main person. All right, so for some background, City Council back in May requested that the Sustainability Commission explore what a tree protection ordinance could look like in the city of Englewood, because we currently do not have one. And while the Sustainability Commission was asked to study this topic, City Council can, of course, ask other boards and commissions to weigh in as well. The Sustainability Commission, upon request, got hard at work doing individual research, as well as having a really phenomenal presentation from Evan. They also really wanted to hear from the community about what they would like to see for a potential tree protection ordinance. So they hosted a listening session on July 31st. Unfortunately, we posted it on social media, but nobody came to the listening session. However, the commission did take it upon themselves to really talk with the community and talk with neighbors about what they would like to see for this. And then lastly, the recommendations you guys are about to hear from Mike is the culmination of many meetings that they had, a lot of in-depth conversations of them really refining and to do the best recommendations to put forward for you all. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Mike to review those recommendations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Here I go. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Sienna and council members. We appreciate the opportunity to offer our recommendation. Is that better? There you go. All right. I think what I'll do is just quickly go through the 4 guidelines that we developed, and then as much detail as you want to get into, we can. And also, we wanted to talk about an item for consideration, which is the creation of a city tree protection plan. So I'll start out briefly and quickly, and we'll see where it goes. The first thing that we came up with was a strong feeling that there ought to be a fee for removing a tree. So when there's construction or development and a tree is going to be removed, there ought to be some type of a fee or penalty, fine, investment, what have you, to protect the tree canopy in the city. And we didn't want to get too granular on it. Evan's the expert. He gave us a great education. There's many ways to go on how a fee could be designed or developed. But basically, we would want to replace a big tree with a big tree, or a big tree with 2 or 3 small trees, so that the girth of those trees would be equated. It would not be intended to punish or be onerous or to stand in the way of development, but it would be intended to account for the fact that trees have value and that Englewood wants to maintain the tree canopy. The next item was to create a fund for planting or replacement. And again, we know a lot of the citizens in Englewood take care of the trees and are concerned about the trees, and it's expensive. My neighbor just had some work done here recently, and it's no small decision when you decide you have to have a tree service come in and give the tree a haircut or what have you. So we thought if there was a fee charged for the removal, maybe there could be a fund set up that could allay some of the expense, just to encourage citizens to be responsible and to take some of the sting out of the bills that might be associated with managing their trees. Education. Evan gave us a great education. I learned some things about trees I just didn't know. And the council talked about it, and we said, gee, there's a lot of information here that citizens ought to understand and appreciate as they manage their property and manage their trees. So we really feel strongly that Englewood ought to provide information so that when a citizen's contemplating making a landscaping decision or a change in their property, they have a reference point or they have access to expertise that can help them design accordingly. Related to that is tree protection best management practices. Again, Evan gave us examples of what other cities do, but it really helps to have guidelines for both developers, construction folks, and private citizens to know the do's and the don'ts. If you're going to take a tree down or if you're going to put a tree in the ground, there are some basics that you need to understand. And amongst the sustainability committee, we admitted to each other we're in the dark on some of those guidelines. So if we're in the dark, our imagination tells us there's probably some other citizens who need to know more of the facts. And then the last item, which was just, I guess, food for thought, or we hope council will consider it, is the creation of a city tree protection plan. So if you could imagine a developer's coming in, and they're going to develop the property, it would be helpful if they developed a tree protection plan, again, working with the city forester ahead of time so that they could work it into the design process. And they could also work it into the budgetary process that they're going through. Again, we're not trying to stand in the way of development or growth in Englewood, but somebody's got to look out for the trees, I guess is the general attitude that we have. That's an overview. I don't know if you want more detailed questions. Certainly Evan can give expert advice, but I can talk to what the discussions were or what the commission talked about or thought about.
Do members of council want to hear a little bit more input on the commission? I have questions, so maybe if you do want to bring it up, Mr. Chisolm, if you want to take us through the conversations, go ahead.
Okay. So you just want me to proceed?
No,
with...
if there's additional information
okay.
that you want to cover.
Okay, I'll just go back to item number 1, just some more detail. Again, we're talking about trees that are removed by developers in construction projects. We're not talking about private property. We're talking about a calculation that the forester can explain better than I can. But again, if it's a 50-year-old oak tree, for example, that's a beautiful tree, and there's a lot of tree canopy that would come down with that tree. So as far as I know, you can't plant a 40-year-old oak tree. So you'd have to come up with a plan that could approximate or alleviate some of that environmental impact of that large tree coming out. There's different formulas on how that can be calculated, but the fee would be determined, and then the developer or the construction company would have to decide, what they want to do. Probably the example that I can imagine is if there was an empty lot in a residential area and a developer came in and there was a big, beautiful oak tree in the middle of that property, it would have to be reckoned with. It would have to be dealt with, that they can't just come in and remove it and not account for what was taken off the property. Any thoughts or questions or feedback on that?
Actually, does members of council have any questions regarding 1? Because I actually do have a question on this. So I guess one of the questions I have, Mr. Chisolm, is are we treating all trees equally, or you mentioned oak trees,
Right.
and I'll just use are we saying any type of tree? We'll just start there.
That's a great question. That's an example of something we debated amongst ourselves. All trees are not created equal. There are some trees out there that are frankly not the highest quality trees, or borderline weeds, and there are some magnificent trees. We would defer to the expertise. We didn't want to go down that rabbit hole too far because we'd never get out of the meeting. When we started going into that, everybody had an opinion, and we said, gee, this isn't easy. You could argue some of these points back and forth. So we kind of stayed at the guideline level, and we would defer for expert recommendations on what's the easiest thing to administer, measure, et cetera.
Thank you, Mr. Chisolm. And then a second part to that question, you're saying this is only for new development, so private property owners will not be subject to the fee.
Right. Private.
Potentially.
Evan's joke was everybody's for a tree management situation unless it's a tree on my property, and nobody wants to talk about that tree. We really were not thinking about private property owners. We were thinking about developers. And now what we'd like to do, again, is to provide guidelines, best practices to the property owners. We have talked to some relatives, friends, and neighbors on this topic, and we didn't get any pushback or negative feeling. Again, the devil's in the details. I mean, I don't know the value of a 100-year-old oak tree versus a 30-year-old spruce. I know they're valuable, and I don't know how that compares to the value of a Siberian elm or a Russian elm or whatever. So we would defer to the experts on trying to come up with that formula or calculation.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chisolm. Any other questions on this subject? We could come back to it, but go ahead, Member Noonan-Camp.
I have a question. Thank you, by the way, for discussing
Thank
this.
you.
This is something that I have been interested in since we've been talking about development and the feel and look and character of our city over the last year. Did you at all, or the commission, look at neighboring cities, other tree ordinances in the metro area, how other communities are caring for trees?
We did not. I know that work had been done by SEAC a few years ago where they came up with a matrix and they compared the various municipalities. Again, we didn't get into that detail. And again, that was 2 years old, so we didn't know what was current. It's out there. I think, I'm sure that research could be resurrected easily, or it could be updated in terms of what other municipalities are doing.
And just one other question. In the memo, you've kind of like a menu of options, and then you have, an idea to consider as the protection plan. Do you not see all of these as part of a protection plan? Do you see those as separate initiatives?
I guess we see it as it's all integrated. Again, we caught ourselves from trying to develop a policy or a plan. So whenever we started to slip into detail of, this fits into that, we retreated backwards and said, you know what? We think council wants general direction, general sentiment coming from us. We don't want to go into that detail. It didn't seem like it was our role to write code, I guess is another way of putting it.
Certainly. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Member Prang?
Good evening. Thank you for the presentation. I've learned a lot through
Thank
just
you.
reading through this. I'm just trying to understand in the forester's assessment and then subsequent recommendation, is there a recommendation of what types of trees? So kind of building on the question that Mayor Sierra asked earlier, or is there a recommendation to meet the value equivalency of the trees, the value that was lost?
Could I defer that to Evan? 'Cause
Absolutely, yeah.
He would be better at answering
I'm
that.
just trying to understand what that recommendation entails, and would developers know the calculation and be familiar with the calculation that's used to know what types of trees they should be replacing?
Yes, the developer themselves wouldn't, and that's when, unless they've been exposed to tree protection in the past. So the assessment would take a few characteristics of the tree. First and foremost, whether the tree is a long-term asset or it's a liability. Not all trees are assets. So what plays into that is the species of the tree, the age of the tree, the health of the tree, the size of the tree. There's a few different characteristics that are assessed by a professional forester arborist, such as myself. And then you would use that assessment to say, this tree is a long-term asset to the city. This is something we should be protecting, or no, this tree is a liability, maybe based on a defect or a hazard or a species that is not desirable. And then there are a few things that could kick it out and say, this is now a liability. This tree is free to remove. Say, if it has a characteristic of a species we want, a size, that would go into the assessment. That this is long-term value for the city. If this tree is removed, we need to recoup something from the lost value. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Hmm.
I did have one other question kind of for the big picture in putting all of this together. Do we currently have educational efforts in place? So I understand that these guidelines are setting up a fee structure and for us to reclaim some value that's being lost. But do we have current educational efforts for homeowners that, or I should say, buyers of the developed land? So say a tree has been removed, developer has, been a part of that process, and then someone purchases the property and perhaps isn't as sustainability minded or environmentally conscious and doesn't recognize the value of that. Do we have current educational forums anywhere, or I'm assuming on the website there's information about it, but just to encourage and do that education proactively, more so for the the person who's going to end up buying a property where a tree might be removed?
I'd like to defer to Evan and/or Mel.
Yes, I'm not aware of any. I do receive phone calls and emails from citizens and residents of Englewood, and I refer them to whether it's Colorado State Forest Service or something in other cities such as Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, some of the larger cities, some of the information they have available. Also international, groups, nationwide organizations. We wouldn't be reinventing anything here, so it's already all been published in other places. Englewood isn't producing that information, but it is available to direct people towards if they do want it. But it would be nice to have it on our website, yes.
Thank you.
Member Wright.
Thank you all so much. I have a couple of questions. What is the difference between a forester and an arborist?
Great question. An arborist takes care of a single tree. A forester takes care of many trees all at once.
Okay,
So
so your knowledge base has to be much more vast.
I'm an arborist and a forester.
Oh,
So
So you're a tree
if
and
somebody is, say, climbing a tree and trimming a limb, they're acting as an arborist.
okay,
If someone is designing a plan such as this to protect many trees at once, that's an act of a forester.
okay.
Yep.
I'm learning a whole lot right now. So I have a couple more questions, please. Somewhere in this pack, and I wished I would have highlighted it when I was reading it, there was something mentioned that an area of the city you would like to see focus more on a bigger tree canopy, but it didn't mention where. And I was curious on what area that you were talking about because it didn't say specifically.
I think the one thing we addressed in that regard was there are identified areas in Englewood that are tree canopy deficient. And our general feeling was those should be areas of first priority. So if there was a tree fund, for example, the people needing assistance in those areas would take priority. But we didn't really look at the city from above and have targeted areas in mind.
Okay,
we,
but there are areas that you
Yeah.
have in mind, and you probably definitely have
Yes,
areas.
ma'am. We completed a canopy survey last year. It's
Okay.
from information that's a little bit older. We don't have like 2022 satellite imagery, but it still stands. So we've identified those areas and I could provide that information.
And I would imagine it's probably been the higher development of recent areas.
It's the areas you would expect along
Okay.
the Santa Fe corridor, northwest, south.
Okay.
Yep.
And then if this tree fund was set up, and let's just say, where a tree was pulled and whatever was developed there, it wasn't feasible to put a tree there, I guess your list of what you would like to see with that tree fund be done on top of planting trees, what other type of things of your wish list would you like to see with that tree fund be done with it? Top of mind, I could see it, the ash borer, beetle, the city spray for that, or, helping other people with trimming their trees, the elderly or, lower income people, pruning and, maintenance of their trees. Those are the type of things that just off the top of my mind. And I'm sure you would have a wish list of things that if this fund were to happen.
go ahead.
Yes. So having access to funding purely for urban forestry can fund where we're taking money from people that are removing trees. And if we can't plant trees back on that property, trying to add that forest canopy somewhere else in the city or adjacent to that property. whether that means planting trees in a park, whether that means increasing the amount of trees we sell on our Arbor Day sale, decreasing the cost of trees in our Arbor Day sale, providing free trees, assisting people to take care of their trees, such as our Emerald Ash Borer program. There's a lot of different avenues to take, but they all take money.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, all right. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for coming with this. My question, I'm not actually sure who this would be for, but if we're trying to differentiate in the ordinance between private property owners and developers, how does one go about doing that within the ordinance? What's the legal differentiation between those categories?
From my experience working on them in the past, it's sometimes part of and excuse me if I say the wrong terminology, but sort of the coding, the building code or building permit, process. So in order to get a certain type of permit or a permit to build a structure, whatever, having a tree protection plan and a survey done by a certified arborist is required.
Okay, so that's not, we're talking about then it would apply to every property, single family homes or multifamily development. So we're not differentiating based on the size of the project. It's based on whether they're pulling a permit or not.
From my experience, this is one side of it that I didn't work on because we had professionals that worked on the permitting side, but there's certain types of building permits, certain types of developments that are targeted. So somebody adding a patio, for example, that's not something that we're looking at. Somebody doing a renovation, that's not something we're looking at. We're looking at scrapes, we're looking at large developments, buying entire properties and completely removing whatever was there. So I don't know the exact legal or terminology difference, but that's what you would be targeting.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Member Praying, do you have another question? The light's still on. Member Russell.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the time that the board took to look at this. I kind of am interested in why council asked. I don't remember our discussion about having the Sustainability Commission look at this. From some of your, what you're looking at, it seems to me like if we're looking at targeting mostly development, we should have been looking at this in Code Next before it ever got to this point. And the reason I'm suggesting that is you couldn't have a lot of lot coverage. You could only have 60%. Now we have taken the setbacks away and we have made the lot coverage so extensive that in a lot of these new developments, they have to tear down trees and there is no place to put trees. And I think that's problematic. As far as, I think Code Enforcement Advisory Committee had looked at the ordinance piece of it. They are the one board and commission that has the authority to recommend ordinance changes. And so I think that perhaps council needs to give you all a little bit more specific direction in what council really wants. I think you've come back with some great suggestions. I think some of this is very difficult other than development. If somebody came onto my property in the city and told me they want me to take out this tree, that tree, and that tree, and if I do take it out, then they're going to charge me to replace it, I would be very upset. Especially in some of the, Englewood is an older community and there are a lot of huge trees. We probably have some trees in our yard that are 60 years plus. And we were just talking the other day about perhaps, I don't know that we're going to take it out yet, but some of our trees are so big, if they fell on the house, it would do damage. And I think those are issues the homeowner needs to deal with. So I guess what I want to know, for your sake also, is what does council really want you, what do we intend to do with this? That's what I want to know from the council.
Thank you,
I do
Member
wanna
Russell. Go
just
ahead.
emphasize that it is not for residential, that it's only for commercial properties. So we are not suggesting that anyone would come to a homeowner and fine them for removing a tree. That's completely voluntary.
And do you think that was the direction that you were given by council? It was mostly for development? Or was there direction really?
From my knowledge, it was just to explore what a tree protection ordinance just generally could look like in the city of Englewood, because we didn't have one, because we don't have one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Member Anderson, do you have another question or light still on?
No, I don't, but I think maybe Member Nunekam's light is not working on her thing anymore.
Oh, it's you too.
Yeah, so you maybe passed
All right.
over.
Go ahead, Member Nunekamp.
Thank you, Member Anderson, Mayor Tim Anderson. Member Russell, I actually am happy to answer your question, I think, because I brought this to council during the Code Next process in April, May, and in the same way that as we were, looking at development in the city, what's really important to me is that we consider those decisions that we're doing things in tandem that preserve the things that we love about Englewood. So in the same way as we're considering new development standards, we were also strengthening historic preservation standards. If we're going to consider new development standards, I wanted us to consider what would preserving trees in the city look like in tandem. And so when I brought that to the council this spring, when we were having that conversation, the council agreed that it might be just like one too many things to discuss in the Code Next process because there was so much happening, and to ask a board and commission to look at it. I don't remember why we chose sustainability. I'm sorry, we can go back and look at that meeting. But that's why it came to the council and how we got here. Because I do think that it's really important. My question for you all is, and I don't know if you looked into this, the National Arbor Day Foundation has model ordinances for different tree preservation ordinances or different plans that cities can do. And I believe that if cities pass those ordinances, it qualifies us for certain grant monies or certain programs. Do you have any information? Did you guys look at all into any of the Arbor Day or the Tree City USA programs? I'm not sure how familiar you may be with them.
Yeah, we are a Tree City USA and have been for, I believe, coming on 39 years. There are many grants available. I'm not aware of any that are specific about having an ordinance. But due to us, we do have code and sort of ordinance in that sort of broader sense that is a mandatory part of being a Tree City USA. So the code that we do have is sufficient for that.
I see.
So we are eligible to apply for grants as a Tree City USA.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
All right. Any further questions from members of council? I guess I do have just one other question. This might be for staff, maybe even for the city attorney, but if council was looking forward to just moving forward or at least exploring this a little bit deeper, like what would be the process? Would we push it to CEAC since they have done preliminary work on this? I think you stated 2 years, Member Chisolm or Mr. Chisolm. Or if this is something that we could have the Sustainability Commission look at as well, just trying to figure out what that process may look like.
It's within council's discretion how you wish to proceed. There is a provision in the CEAC municipal code that states they do review ordinances regarding trees and shrubs and other things. But that doesn't prohibit city council from sending this to Sustainability Commission or the Tree Advisory Board that we created several years ago.
Thank you, City Attorney. I guess I'll open it up to members of council. I guess some of the concerns I wonder about that just from this conversation is just narrowing down exactly which trees would be protected and not protected or part of this fee. I also question whether or not we have enough development that the fund will get big enough. And this is something that I just don't have the information about. How many trees have been cut down during development, new development that would be subject to a fee, that potentially would have been subjected to a fee? And what would have been that, the total amount within the fund itself? Because it makes me wonder whether or not we have to limit it just to new development. It potentially does have to move to private property. But I do have concerns about that aspect as well, but those are just some of the questions I have about going down this route. But I would be interested in exploring this further if members of council were on board. So I'll load up two members of council if they want to weigh in. Member Wright.
I'd like to see it go to code enforcement since they've already looked at it. And also, I do know that they were getting training in different trees and shrubs and different things. And how many foresters do we have within the city?
You're looking at them?
So, Evan would have backup. So, because I don't think development's going to stop anytime soon. So, we would have that backup there that code enforcement could work with Evan, and maybe you could join them in some meetings. Because I do know that the public goes to those meetings a little bit more often, perhaps. So.
Thank you, Member Wright. Member Anderson?
I'm interested in seeing this move forward in some fashion. I do have concerns about it. I think you can, some places that have adopted tree ordinances can become overbearing. I'm not sure exactly how to look that we make differentiations we need to make sure people, individuals and private property owners aren't being burdened by this or worried that if they, a neighbor reports them, they're going to have the city after them about a tree or something like that. I think I'm really hesitant about those things. And then on the flip side, making, if we have to make the fees so large for other developments that it ends up being prohibitive for development, then I have concerns there too. So I really have a lot of questions that remain, but would be interested in continuing the discussion.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Russell.
Thank you. Along the same lines as Mayor Pro Tem, how are we going to differentiate between a developer and a private homeowner that might decide to scrape their house and their tree? I mean, are we then going to penalize them also? So,
Member Russell, would you be okay with exploring the next step here, potentially?
I actually, I don't know. I think that maybe we should look at it, and maybe in looking at it, we may decide that we need to scale back on some of the size of development on some of the properties. Perhaps also looking at how many trees would be impacted in areas, especially that are targeted for higher development.
Thank you, Member Russell.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Noonan-Kemp.
Thanks, Mayor. I would like to see this go forward. Like anything that we do in this job, the devil will be in the details. It always is. I am very interested in what it could look like. My concern now is that there's not a strong incentive to build or develop around our existing grand trees. How do we create a strong incentive that maintains appropriate flexibility, but also maintains, I think, one of the most beautiful characteristics that we have in our city? We can have a really high quality of life in an urban environment. I think trees are a really big part of that. That's what I hear from residents. It's how I feel about our community. I think it's a false binary to think we have to have one or the other, housing or trees. And I'd like to see if we can find a good balance, which is the goal here. So we might not, but I'd like to at least explore it.
Yeah. Thank you, Member Noonan-Kemp. That does give the majority here in terms of weighing in. I'd like to see what other cities are also doing as well. So if we can just get that information, I may ask it as a council request, but make sure it's made available to not only sustainability, but also obviously code enforcement put it together. So anyone else from members of council that want to weigh in on the topic, or Mr. Chisolm, anything that you want to add?
Yes. If a tree falls in Englewood, somebody will hear it.
You made that aware tonight, Mr. Chisolm. Thank you so much. With no further questions from members of council, thank you so much, Mr. Chisolm, Mr. Anderson,
Thank you.
Ms. Englund. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Have a great evening and happy holidays. All right, up next, we are looking at the proclamation review. Do we have Deputy City? Oh, we do. Deputy City Manager Tim Dodd here to discuss the 2024 proclamations. Good evening, Mr. Dodd.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is an annual presentation that we do. This is actually the earliest that we've done it. Sorry?
You might have to use the keyboard or the mouse. There we go.
Got it, thank you. So just by way of introduction, especially for our new members, in 2021, we worked with the City Attorney's Office to develop, at Council's request, a proclamation policy. And so the proclamation policy did a couple things. Number one, it identified reasons why proclamations could come before Council. And number two, it identified a process through which they could come to Council. The first slide that you see before you are the 4 reasons that we have for proclamations. So they're to honor people or organizations that positively impact the city. They also could be a celebration of, national or regional or statewide dates of importance. They could also be to bring public attention to an issue that's important to the city. And then finally, the fourth one is to declare a policy stance as a city. So there are 2 different components to the review process. One of them is this annual session that we have that Council, it's in the policy that we do this. However, you are not required by any policy to prioritize any proclamation. So the way that this works is the list that you have in front of you, and you have all the draft proclamations attached. These are all proclamations that were on your list last year. So several were added by council members, just thinking of a few off the top of my head. Diabetes Month, for example, was added by Councilmember Woodward, as was Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Then I believe a few members, Mayor Pro Tem Anderson and Member Russell added a few, I believe the Bill of Rights Day and Constitution Week, and there were a few others. And so this is a process by which you can decide whether you want to prioritize them. If you prioritize them during the study session, effectively what that means is you'll only see them once at a council meeting. You'll see them the day that they're read. If they're not prioritized, it's a 2-step process where they come to you first under mayor's choice to determine whether or not you want them to be on an agenda, and then they're read as a second time. We also do, in addition to this session, we have a form on our website where anyone can submit a proclamation. They are reviewed by our office and the city clerk's office just to make sure they comport with the policy, and if they do, they're brought forward. This past year, there were 3 additional proclamations that came to you. One was U.S. Marine Corps Memorial Day, which was April 29th. One was a National I look at my list. Library Card Month in September, and one was Conflict Resolution Month in October. I did not add those to your list because they were not on the list last year. However, you could, of course, add them to the priority list if you would like, as they were entered last year by community members. And then, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but you do have a list that's also in your packet of the different proclamations that were read last year that were prioritized. And then the time periods as well. In your packet, you have additional information about each one, including the draft text that we used in previous years. So that's the presentation.
Deputy City Manager, thank you very much for your time. Any questions for members of council? Actually, pretty. Go ahead, Member Wright.
Okay, Liberty Day, why is it not called this day? Or
That was how it was entered. I believe it was brought up last year that it was, I think the way we called it was Liberty Day and then in parentheticals July 4th, but you could certainly name it whatever you'd like it to be.
Okay, and then I noticed that some of these, sorry, new at this, so I remember that the head of the Marine Corps, I do not remember her name, for Memorial Day came. I noticed like Veterans Day's not there. And then I see Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Month. have we ever had any type of appreciation for our first responders?
I think during the period of COVID-19, they were maybe not at a council meeting specifically. I'm unaware. There may have been recognition that way. I have to point out too, this is kind of an organic list, so it's one that's been developed over time. Last year, there were several proclamations that council added, so there certainly are more that we probably could add or ones that we could change.
Right, because I saw somewhere, I believe, 5 to 10 for the coming year at the beginning, and then I read this, and I think it just seems like it gets bigger and bigger, so I don't know if the goal is to try and bring it down or to bring it up, or what the ultimate goal of council is for this, and maybe I could get some guidance from my fellow members and mayor.
I don't think that there's any specific goal. It's just to recognize just some groups. And I don't think that you, Deputy City Manager, I don't think that you spoken about the role that the DEI committee also has in this. So some of these have come from our DEI committee internally, correct?
Yes, and I do believe, I hope it was in your packet, their origin or at least where they came from and what they recognize and how they're celebrated. The list that council approved last year did have some that were recommended by the staff DEI committee, but it was approved. So the ones that you see in front of you, those were approved by council last year as priority ones, but yes, they did, or many of them did originate in the staff DEI committee.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager. Member Ward and then Mayor Pro Tem.
So I promised to do this only once every 2 years. But I would like to revisit the possibility of just taking the year off from proclamations. My preference is and always has been to have this council focusing on council business. I know that proclamations are sort of a feel-good thing that people like to do. I find them wholly unnecessary. So I would like to posit that possibility to the council. Just take 2024 off of proclamations and continue with council business otherwise.
Thank you, Member Ward. Member Anderson, or Mayor Pro Tem.
I would, I'd actually support Member Ward's suggestion. Alternatively, if council doesn't have an appetite for that, then I would propose to remove the DEI proclamations from the list.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Prang.
I'm not sure that I agree with taking a year off because it distracts from doing city business. I feel like the proclamations are a demonstration of the value of the city council and in what we want to encourage the city to value. But I do have questions about this being a similar list each year, and it does sound like we've added a few in the recent year. So I too kind of wonder about council's typical have you had a process or discussion on how to prioritize these, or does it begin to feel like, I think to your point, Member Ward, does it begin to feel like also rubber stamping, like we're kind of doing this repeatedly year after year, and does it lose the value and the meaning that we maybe want to accomplish with these? So that's kind of a question to put out there to all of the council members that have sat previously.
Thank you, Member Prang. Did anyone want to chime in first? Member Ward?
Just a brief response to Member Prang. You bring up a good point, but I think one of the challenges I have is that, well, proclamations are a declaration of the values of the city council. They are a declaration of the values of a minimum of 4 members of the city council. And it is always possible that there may be 1 member or 2 members or even 3 members who disagree with what the proclamation is declaring. And yet the pronouncement is still made under the authority of the full body that these are our values. So that's one hazard as I see with proclamations, and one reason why I would prefer just not to do them, aside from the fact that I just fundamentally believe that they're a waste of this body's valuable time.
Member Newcamp, is there anything you wanted to add?
Sure, I'm happy to weigh in. I respect the thoughts of my esteemed colleagues, but I support the proclamations. They take about 3 minutes, and I think that the value far outweighs the time investment. And I understand that for many folks, a particular proclamation may not seem meaningful, but it is meaningful for the person maybe that it's designed around or for whoever we're acknowledging, whether that be our service members or our first responders, our small business owners, our residents of color. I want to ensure that if only for 3 minutes, if that's something small we can do that makes that part of our community feel seen and appreciated, that feels like a pretty low lift for us to do. So I support this list. I think, there were a couple that were very important to Member Woodward. If, maybe those are some that we pare down this year. In my experience as well, if someone has heard from a citizen that they would like a proclamation, or, for example, conflict resolution often comes to us from our school and district and from the court system. There, in my experience, has been professional deference to our colleagues on the council for those kinds of proclamations when someone has asked to add one to the list. But typically, to answer your question as far as how we make the list, it's we just have this discussion right now, and then if anyone wants to add one throughout the year, then they can raise that in council member's choice.
Yeah, thank you, Member Newcamp. Yeah, exactly right. I think it's not a perfect process, but I do enjoy that we have a process. I like the fact that the citizens are able to weigh in as well and request that we add another proclamation to a meeting. So, like Deputy City Manager stated, it does come in front of us in Mayor's Choice, and I just bring it up. The proclamation is there, and then we just give a head nod. Yes, we'll go ahead and read it. So. Again, it's not a perfect process, but yeah, I like to continue with what we see within our slide deck tonight. So, anything else you want to add, Member Prang? I see your light's still on. So, Member Russ?
Actually, yes, I
go
wasn't
ahead.
going to, but I'll go ahead. I do see the value in a lot of these proclamations promote inclusivity and give a message of inclusivity, and I think that that's something that we want to continue to demonstrate in various ways to our constituents.
Thank you, Member Prang. Member Russell?
Thank you. And I do agree with the Mayor Pro Tem and with Member Ward that I think that it has become used to proclamations were few and very meaningful. But the more we get, the less meaningful they become. And I actually had been very upset about a few of them, but once they come forward, I mean, Independence Day changed to Liberty Day was, it's been Independence Day my entire life. And it has, I mean, Memorial Day is not on here, Veterans Day is not on here. And I believe those are things that even national holidays are recognized, and we are not recognizing national holidays, but adding a lot of other things. So I am in the favor of erring on the side of very few, or if we're not going to err on the side of very few, then I'm okay with having none. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Wright?
Thank you. On this one, I have to side with Mayor Pro Tem, Member Ward, and Member Russell. Looking at these Arbor Day, Earth Day, Public Service Week, National Asian American, Small Business Week, most of these are recognized throughout the U.S. It's not unique to Englewood only. So they're recognized by everybody. It's not something unique. We're not recognizing a group or a single person or something special. I agree with Liberty. I was questioning, I'm like, July 4th. It's to most of us, July 4th or Independence Day. I don't know where Liberty Day came from. I'm a bit bothered that Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Month where we're not recognizing the rest of our first responders. I've mentioned that already. Small Business Saturday. Yeah, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem and Member Russell and Member Ward. If these were a unique list where everybody's like, oh, that's something new, I think looking in the back of the pack, the only thing that was not listed here that I think is unique, which is the Volunteer of the Year, is the only thing that I saw that was unique, that is something that the city needs to continue and recognize. And I believe that's probably a proclamation, and that is the one thing that I would want to see we continue. So, thank you.
Thank you, Member Wright. Member Noonekamp?
Thank you, Mayor. I think, obviously we'll go with the majority of where the council is at. I would love to see Veterans Day added, or other ones that maybe people have brought up, or I'm happy, we get to decide right now what we do. We can change it to Independence Day. My only word of caution to this council is we can add. It sends also a very strong message when we remove. And so it will be interesting, the majority of this council, to decide which proclamations you want to remove and what message that sends to our community, and where the council wants to go, where the majority of the council wants to go. And we should just do this thoughtfully and considerately, understanding that we're sending a strong message with what we choose to acknowledge and what we don't.
Thank you, Member Noonekamp. Member Ward?
Member Noonekamp brings up a very good point, and that is exactly why I suggest we remove all of them. The message is about proclamations, not about these specific proclamations, if we remove all proclamations.
Thank you, Member Ward. I know the majority tonight does want to trim down the list or remove them completely, or remove all proclamations. I'm in favor of just keeping the list as is, maybe adding one or two. So if members of the majority want to chime in on their preference, I'll ask for that now. Go ahead, Member Anderson, or Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm in favor of removing them all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Wright or Member Russell?
I'm in favor of removing them all also.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Wright?
I'm in favor of removing them all.
Okay. Thank you for that.
May I add, like I said, the Volunteer of the Year, because it was in here, that does need to remain, please.
Member Wright, if we're going to make a decision to remove all proclamations, then we should just remove them all. I'll ask.
Is Volunteer of the Year a proclamation, or is it part of a program where we recognize that person? Because it is not on the list that we're talking, and I'm flipping through.
Is it Citizen of the Year you're talking about, Member
Yes.
Wright?
Yes.
I think that could be addressed without a proclamation.
Okay, perfect.
And remember, it's not in there just because it's unique to the individual every year, so we don't have a template for it. But there is one other one that's unique to Englewood, which is Serve Your Neighbor Day, that council adopted, I believe, last year, and that's to recognize some events in the city. Oh, sorry. So there, you asked about ones that are unique to Englewood. So there's two. There's the Citizen of the Year Award, which we don't have an example just because we do it uniquely for the individual every year. And then the other one is Serve Your Neighbor Day, which was created last year to be specific to Englewood. Yeah, it's either a day or a week. I apologize. I'm not sure. It was supposed to be in the spring to recognize Serve Your Neighbor Day. It's done in May, and it's tied to the Celebrate Englewood event.
Any further questions, Member Wright?
I do. Thank you. We could still announce and discuss Serve Your Neighbor, Citizen of the Year without proclamation. Okay. And I'm all for, thank you.
Thank you, Member Wright. Member Nunekamp?
I just have a question for the majority of the council. Is this something that they're committing to, we are committing to as a body for the entire year? So if the Marine Corps veteran group comes to us again and asks to do a proclamation, we are going to tell them no. We're going to say no to every other request throughout the entire year. Because the consistency is concerning here. If we're doing this now, then we're going to change our minds later.
Member Ward and then Mayor Pro Tem.
That's how I feel about it. And I'll also say that I'm open to having this conversation again next year. I just want to take this year off proclamations.
Thank you, Member Ward. Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm in agreement with Member Ward that it's all proclamations for the whole year.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, everyone.
Sorry, Mayor,
Go ahead.
can we just hear from all the four in the majority that that's the commitment here? Because I think that matters in this moment.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for that, Member Nunekamp. Member Wright, Member Russell,
We already committed to that. Why do we
for
have to?
2024.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And Member Wright, 2024.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. All right. Honestly, this previous discussion did really upset me. So, but thank you for having that conversation. Not too happy about the outcome, but I understand and will go along with the wishes of the majority. So thank you very much, Deputy City Manager, for the review tonight. Moving on to council liaisons for boards and commissions. Everybody has a paper copy. There are some boards that are, obviously, this is just going to be for the liaison, which of us are going to be serving on which board as the liaison. There are some open positions. I think while we were talking during the tech outage at the start of the meeting, it sounds like there are a little bit of, or at least a few mistakes. And I'll just point out some of the ones that I caught, and then you could chime in as well. But the DDA actually meets on the fourth Wednesday, but at 4:30. There is the Downtown Development Authority, the Inglewood Downtown Development Authority. That one meets at 4:30, not at 2:30. The Water and Sewer Board, actually, there's 3 members of council, so it's the mayor plus 2 additional council members. There should be, we'll go through that here in a second, but myself and Mayor Pro Tem currently serve on that board. And then for the Tri-Cities Homelessness Policy Group, there really is only one that sits on that board, and that's Mayor Pro Tem at the moment. And it looks like we have 2 vacancies for the South Platte River Working Group, since Member Woodward is an alternate and no longer a council member. So, Member Nunekamp, yeah, I was going to just start off with any comments on how to proceed, but Member Nunekamp, go ahead if you have something else that may be a mistake.
I just have another edit. Public Library Board meets on the 3rd Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. That board just voted to change their meeting time.
And what was that? Was that the?
Public Library Board?
It's Thursday? And
Yes.
was it the 3rd Thursday?
3rd Thursday.
3rd Thursday.
Let me just double check. Just one second, I apologize. At 6 p.m. still.
All right. So 3rd Thursday at 6 p.m. for the Public Library Board. All right, good to know. I'll just make this comment. I'm okay with sitting on the current boards that I sit on. Obviously, there's quite a few of them. Really, the only one that may be open just to other members of council would be the Transportation Advisory Committee. I've served on there for 4 years, I believe now, but I'd be open to giving that up if anybody else wants to sit on the board. And also the Youth Advisory Board that just started up, so I've only been at 1 meeting or 2 meetings so far. So, Mayor Pro Tem, I'll get this right at some point. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I would be interested in switching with you or giving up the Sustainability Commission in favor of Transportation Advisory Committee.
Okay. Thank you. So you'll be in favor of switching from sustainability. Okay.
Yep.
I'd be open on serving on sustainability, but Member Praying, Member Wright, are there any boards, since you're new to council, are there any boards that you guys are eyeballing in terms of potentially wanting to sit on? Go ahead, Member Praying.
I'm glad that you offered up to the Youth Advisory Committee, because I was going to ask if someone wanted to perhaps switch out on that one. I'd have a high level of interest in serving the Youth Advisory Group.
Okay. Thank you, Member Prang. Any others or anything else?
I saw that Parks and Rec is vacant.
It is.
I'll take.
Well, I'm not signing them just yet, but I just want you have
Yeah.
interest in the Parks and Rec.
I didn't know if there was a reason that it was vacant, but I'll take that. And
No, the only reason why I was asking is that I'm not sure how other members feel, but if they felt they sat on a board for longer than they would like or would like to just change seats, maybe if you just make your preference known that they may, oh, you know what, I may get off that board kind of thing. So, all right, so Parks and Rec, Member Wright?
I am interested in Dr. Cog.
We are calling it Dr. Cog, so.
Thank you very much. And I'm also interested in the CML.
Okay. Perfect.
And Mayor, do you still sit as the alternate for the chamber?
I guess so, but I just attend when I can. Oh, wait, no. So that's a different meeting. You guys meet, what day is the chamber meet?
That's Tuesday mornings.
Yeah, so I actually do not frequent that one. I do their copies on Fridays or whatever. And that is something different.
That is, the way that one works, and I'm happy to continue doing it, is that I just go for the first usually 10 minutes of the meeting and give them an update. I don't sit through the whole chamber board meeting. That's kind of traditionally how that one's.
Okay. So I was interested in that also as the alternate.
Okay. All right.
You're not able to be interested.
Okay. Sounds good. Member Wright. Anyone else want to chime in? Go ahead, Member Ward.
I was actually a little surprised to see that we don't have a current appointee to CML.
I was too.
I think Member Wink was the appointee to
Okay.
them.
Okay. I'm happy to serve on that board. I've attended both of the CMLs that I have had the option of attending, their conferences. I think there's a lot of stuff that's going to be coming soon, so I'd like to be part of that.
All right, thank
So
you.
is it you or is it me?
Oh, we haven't decided. I'm just trying to get interest. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Member Wright. Member Russell, something you want to add as well?
Is there an opening on the water and sewer board?
There is. Member Woodward was the other.
Okay, I would be interested in
Okay.
doing that.
All right. No other changes from members from the previous city council members other. I was going to say one other thing, Member Nooncamp, and I guess that could be a question for staff as well. Hospital liaisons, but there's also a Swedish task force. They should, to me, have we done anything? I'm just trying to think, should they just be consolidated, just have the same members for both?
Yes, I believe so. We had the same question 2 years ago when we did this,
Okay.
and we said that we would see how it played out, and it has just been the regular meeting with
Right.
the hospitals, and so I do think it can be consolidated, but I would like to maintain doing that.
Yeah,
This
I
is my
like to
district.
stay on that board,
Mhm.
and yeah, on those two committees, so I'm fine with that.
I am happy to stay where I'm at on all of my committees. I would just flag that we need to fill, I think, a place for historic preservation.
We do that one as well as South Platte River Working Group. That's the other one that's open. All right,
I'll take South Platte.
South Platte.
Yeah, I
Did you
noticed
look
that
at the time that they
vacancy, so-
meet at?
And then I also would be happy to serve as the alternate.
Do we have an alternate for the CAC?
It was Member Wink.
Oh, okay.
And Mayor, did I mention that I was interested in Mally?
No, I didn't write down Mally.
Yeah. I
Let me
think
catch up here, though.
I
So let
think
me
I
still remember
make
praying
the
there.
age requirement.
Just for the record, there isn't an age requirement for the council liaison.
Oh, good.
When I first started there, they said there was.
Why am I not seeing Mally's on here? There it is, you're right. Okay. So take off Woodward there. That's right. All right. Okay. So, Member Anderson, I am fine making the change since there was no other interest in ETAC and sustainability. I'm fine making that change. So to meet the second Tuesday, I don't think I have any conflicts then. I'll put you down on transportation advisory. Okay. All right. Anything else for members of council before we just go through? Seems like. All right, let's see here. So no other changes. All right. And no one, member praying you want to be the alternate on CAC. All right, so let's just start. So Arapahoe City Collaborative will stay Sierra and Russell, Budget Advisory, Russell and Ward. The CML, so we do have Member Wright as well as Member Ward, both interested in this. Do we know what time they meet at? I guess, is there a time concern for either Member Wright or Member Ward? No. Okay. Member Ward, since you have been attending the CML policy committees, I'm fine with you serving that seat. No offense, Member Wright, but
The conference is not the policy, it's just to
Right, I know.
clarify.
Yeah. But also, you've gone to the policy committees or
I have not.
You have not?
We haven't
Okay.
sent anybody since our liaison left,
okay.
to my knowledge.
Thank you. Any feedback from members of council on
It
Member
does say
Ward?
there's 2 council liaisons for that.
Oh, there is. Okay. Easy. Thank you so much, Member Ward, for pointing that out. And Member Wright. Yeah, keep us posted on that because there's quite a bit coming down the docket on that one. So CAC, we're going to keep Member Nooncamp. Oh, excuse me. So Code Enforcement Advisory, actually, so Member Russell's the only one on, there's only one liaison for CEAC, and that's Member Russell. Cultural Arts Commission, Nooncamp and Prang would be the alternate. Dr. Cog, Member Wright, you said you'd like to be the alternate. And actually, Member Wright, let me work with you on that one. Maybe we can alternate. There's only one voting member per city, so we both can't be in attendance. Well, we both can be in attendance, but only one of us can vote. Go ahead, Member Wright.
Can I ask you this? If I go to the first Wednesday at the 4 p.m., you do the third Wednesday at 6:30, we're still need to do historic preservation. I could do the historic preservation.
You're right. Okay. So your preference would be to do the Wednesdays then?
Well, they're both Wednesday, but I
Oh, no,
could-
sorry, but the 4 p.m., sorry.
I could do the 4 p.m. so that I could do the third Wednesday and I could be the liaison for historic preservation because no one volunteered.
I see what you mean, Member Wright. Let me get back to you on that. I don't think they're meeting on Wednesdays. I want to say it's Thursdays at 4 p.m., but I'll let you know.
Okay.
But I got you. I got you where
Okay,
you're at
and
on that.
if it is Wednesday,
Yeah.
is that doable for you?
Yeah, that would be doable.
Okay.
Member Noonicamp?
I just have a question about that. Is it okay for our membership to alternate every other meeting, or will there need to be some
I may
consistency?
have to check it. So in terms of the Wednesday nights, yes, we are able to, or the 6:30s, we are able to alternate. I'm not sure if they want us to keep us consistent at the 4 p.m. though.
Okay.
So I'll verify
Right, so if
that.
I'm going to the 4 o'clock all the time,
Well, I think that's the one thing that we're going to have to double check on, Member Wright. If you're showing up, if we're consistently, the 6:30, we're able to alternate. I know that for a fact. The 4 p.m. I'm not so sure about. So that's the one I had to get back on.
Okay.
So, but yeah, let me get a little bit more information, Member Wright, and then let you know, by the weekend in terms
Okay,
of what that looks like.
fantastic. Okay.
The chamber, we have Anderson. Member Wright, if you want to be the alternate on that, I'm fine with that as well. So I just haven't been to that meeting. Since it falls on Tuesday, the DDA, I'd like to stay in that position. Housing, Englund Housing Authority is Member Anderson. Firefighters pension, myself. Historic preservation, Member Wright, that may be a question mark just depending on how the Dr. Caw conversation goes. Mally Trust, we have Member Wright. And Member Wright, I'm going to just hold it to you that we don't have any kind of duplicates there. So you can't be in two places at one time. So since you got your name on quite a few of these, non-emergency employees retirement, Member Russell, Parks and Rec, Member Prang, is that right? Police and Fire Sustainability, supplemental, myself on the next one. Public Library Board, Noonan Camp, Sustainability is myself. Transportation Advisory is Member Anderson. Water and Sewer Board, Member Russell, we're adding you, keeping Mayor Pro Tem and myself.
And on that one, if there's somebody else who really I'm happy to keep doing it, but if somebody else wants to do that, I'm feeling pretty loaded up, especially with adding the Affordable Housing Task Force. So that's one I could let go if there's somebody who wants it, but I can continue to.
Yeah. Water and Sewer.
Water and Sewer Board.
Councilman Anderson, I'll be happy to take your place on that board.
Okay, thank you.
Member Ward. All right. Youth Advisory, Member Prang, you wanted to sit on that one, correct? I'll be happy to pass that over to you then, unless Mayor or Member Ward. Oh, actually, you know what? I wouldn't be able to do it anyway. Are they meeting on Wednesdays? Is that right? Sarah? It is right? Okay. Actually, I was going to say you're there, so. Okay, so I wouldn't be able to make it anyway. So, oh wait, no, I could make it. This is the fourth Wednesday. Okay, either way, Member Prang, you can have Youth Advisory, City and School Board, Noonan Camp and Ward. Should have fought for that one. Sierra Noonan Camp for the hospital liaisons. Oh, there's still more. South Platte Working Group, that's Prang, Swedish Task Force, myself and Noonan Camp. And Tri-Cities Homelessness is just Member Anderson, so there's only one position there. So, all right. Did I miss anything? Go ahead, Member Wright.
On Tri-Cities, is there one or it says two?
There's
only one. That's
Yeah.
an error on the sheet.
Oh,
Staff, are we able to clean those up for the next time? Just there were a couple of errors, so. All right, perfect. All right, anything else for members of council? If not, we are done with that portion as well. So then we are now moving on to reports from boards and commissions. Have there been any boards and commissions recently? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem, if you have anything.
The one, two that I've gone to are the Inglewood Housing Authority. Again, these meetings are often a lot of details on budget and occupancy stuff, so I don't think there's anything to report from that, other than they are, I think I maybe mentioned this the last time, they're in a process of reorganizing that has the potential to free up some funds for the future. So they're working with a consultant. This is kind of a long-term project to work with a consultant to reorganize the organization as a whole. They have a variety of different types of properties and how those properties are positioned in relation to HUD's authority structure has a lot of implications for ongoing expenses and an annual revenue that they can use for repairs on the buildings and stuff like that. So they're in that process of repositioning. That's the only, they're working through that. That's the only thing really to update on. And then the Affordable Housing Task Force, we had our first meeting and it was great. Mostly just met all of the members and then talked a little bit about how the meetings were going to be run. And prioritize some of the discussion items there. I'll let Member Nunekamp add anything on that if she wants to.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Nunekamp.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem. I thought it was a really effective meeting. They will meet again in January. They set their ground rules for how they want to engage with each other as a group. Did some introductions, and then started thinking about what's important for their scope for what they need to be working on. And they will come back in January to consider what topics they want to discuss and work on over the course of the next year. And one of my favorite questions is that they're tackling is, what do they want the city to look and feel like? You know, what should housing be like, and how accessible should it be for our community going forward? So those are some of the questions that they are beginning to ask. And appreciate the investment of the volunteers who are serving there. I also was at the Cultural Arts Commission on Wednesday. They are moving forward with the CDOT application and process to get our new median art. We have 2 new sculptures that will be up on the medians on Hampton as soon as we can get everything squared away with CDOT, which I'm sure you can imagine is harder than it sounds. And they're considering additional median art in their budget for next year. So they set their budget for 2024, looking at some more public art in the city, which is really exciting. They are also, the Swedish Horse Project, which the commission did a couple of years ago. You may have seen the horses around the city. You might see less of them now because many of them either were damaged or vandalized, or just the toll of the weather on the horses and on the art took its toll. And so now, if you would like to see them, there are, I think, 4 or 5 on display in the library history nook. So if you go down to the first floor, right across from the Sherilyn trolley, you can see the horses on display. They're being restored. We're really excited to see those back up. And the library board meets tomorrow.
Thank you, Member Nunekamp. Any other boards or commission updates? All right, we'll move over to council members' choice. I guess I'll just kick it off. We have our Tri-Cities homelessness meeting this coming Wednesday in this room, correct? City Manager Lewis, it starts at 6 o'clock for dinner. The meeting will kick off at 6:30. Yeah, so I hope to see you all there. I'll be here in attendance. So I don't think I have anything else. I guess just next Monday, just so everyone's aware, we do have our dinner at Bise, our council dinner, before the council meeting starts off at 7 o'clock. So we'll be starting up at 6 o'clock. Mayor or City Manager Lewis? I think it's 6 o'clock, right? I think it's...
Didn't it say 5 o'clock on the calendar and then 6 o'clock for the council meeting? That's what it said on the calendar.
Did it? I don't think we have that much on the agenda that night. I'm glad I brought it up. So now
Can we get that
let's
information
just
to
get
you
some
tonight?
clarification on
We'll
that
get
because
that
I don't
clarification.
recall that we're looking to start the meeting early. So, but thank you very much for that, Member Russell and Member Wright. But that's it for me. Anyone else? Go ahead, Member Wright.
I would like to request a study session. There's been, from last week when we voted on for additional funds when it came to our storm drains, and we have citizens that are talking quite often about our storm drains. I would like to see if we could have a study session at a resident level understanding. I know there's things on our website and stuff like that. It's quite often difficult to find the information. When I was with Sean last week, discussed this, and I remember Praying even had questions. So if we could have a study session that was at a level for residents to understand where we've been, where we're going, where we're headed. That's very simplified for everybody to understand. I think it would help answer a lot of questions. I know that we've had a lot of consultants, a lot of information and stuff, and if we could just get that at a level where everybody could understand and get everybody on the same page, I think it might answer a lot of questions for a lot of people, including myself. And I've read a lot of the reports and I still have questions. So if that's everything that everybody would be willing to do, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Member Wright. I guess, So how much detail are we looking to cover as part of the study session? Are we talking about how we got to where we are today, plus what projects, citizens should see within the next, year or two, or over the next 2 or 3 years, that type of thing? Or
That
are
would
we
be,
trying to get more granular?
that would be great. And I mean, there's information that I've been looking at recently on the number of houses that are susceptible to flooding in Englewood, and it's quite a few. And I think concerns that a lot of residents have is, are we building for, 25-year floods, 50-year, or 25-year rains, 50-year rains, 100-year rains? Are we preparing for those storms, or are we just putting Band-Aids on? So I think if we really look at that information and explain it to folks, it will help them understand where we're going and that type of thing, because the city is putting a lot of work into it. It's just putting that understanding there, so.
Thank you, Member Wright. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have anything to add, or?
Well, I think the member rights idea is a good one in terms of catching the citizenry up and educating people on where we're at and where we're going with this. I'm wondering if that would be more appropriately done as like an all council town hall or something, a more informative thing that people have the opportunity to ask questions. We have several staff members there from Public Works and to answer questions or something like that. I wonder if that would accomplish the aims better than having it in a closed study session where the audience is typically pretty small.
Actually, I really like that idea, because that's one of the things that I would love, is to be able to have a back and forth with people. And that's something we don't have the opportunity to do at council very often.
I'd be supportive of doing that town hall. I think it'd be great.
That's a really good idea.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Wright, anything else? We'll go Member Prang and then Member Russell. Unless Member Russell, did you have something on this topic, or was it?
Yes, I just wanted to respond to that. I like the idea too, as far as a town hall meeting, but I would like a presentation from staff a little bit so that everybody in the hall can hear the same thing at the same time. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was kind of where I was kind of hesitating with it. Is just there needs to be a presentation from staff on how we got here, plus what the plan is, and then a Q&A session from there. So thank you, Member Russell. Go ahead, Member Prang.
Yeah, not much to add. I don't have a strong preference on whether it's in study session or town hall. I love the idea of the town hall setting for it. For me, the intent was just to kind of level set with 2 new members of council, and for us to have a little bit better understanding of that historical context and how we got to where we're at today. It seems to be a topic that continues to drive conversation, and I'd like to feel better, well-versed to be able to respond.
Yeah, no, thank you, Member Prang. Well, the other aspect of it is that we have been approving quite a few contracts over the past few months on this, so probably is a good idea to level set on how we got here. So, Member Noonkamp?
I support the town hall as well, and I just wanted to offer, especially for our newer members, to, if you want other briefings with staff, a sit down. That's what I did when I was new on council. I sat down with Public Works for a few hours, and they brought me completely up to speed on everything. And as you do those, I think, other council members may be interested as well. So, but that's just, I'm offering that in goodwill.
Thank you, Member Noonkamp. Actually, to add to this conversation, I know there's other aspects of it that we haven't, there's other areas of Englewood that are susceptible to flooding that aren't part of the Southwest Englewood Basin, and some of those, maybe just have that as part of a different slide of like, these are the other areas that we have identified that the public should be aware about that is susceptible to flooding. So go ahead, Member Wright.
And I'm wondering if a study session wouldn't be good to bring us up to speed. I mean, the public could watch and then do a town hall so that we're not kind of blindsided by some questions. So I'm wondering if both might not be a good idea.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to have that conversation. We probably need to noodle a little bit better on what the proper format is. So
Right.
Because you're right, you may need to get the information ahead of time so you can noodle on that information and then have the town hall. So
Right.
Okay. Member Prang, are you just leaving your light on? Oh, it's like,
apologies.
it's like, remember
I'm
when we
looking
never
there,
left?
actually.
I'm starting it today. So anyway, anything else for member or council members' voice? All right, we'll move to city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of updates. We had a good first weekend of Holiday Express, and we had actually 3,200 tickets sold for that event. So that's one of our fastest events to sell out. A lot of kids going through there. Really appreciate all the staff that have volunteered. Just also wanted to thank the staff that volunteered pretty extensively for the Christmas store that was at Bishop Elementary this weekend. Had a lot of employees on Friday and Saturday that help with that event. And thank you to the great team that puts that on each year from Sacred Grace. And also just wanted to let council know I've had a couple of requests for town halls. And so this may be something that we want to just talk about community engagement more globally at the retreat about, in addition to the one that was tonight, which I agree with the suggestion that let's have the study session, then the town hall. I think that would be a good cadence. Plus, we can put that study session together, certainly in January, and then maybe shoot for February. What I'd like to do on something for a stormwater town hall is also get some of our partners like Mile High Flood District to talk about their role, and even maybe get some local people that have experienced flooding to be part of that too. So that will take some coordination, just as I kind of think through how that would be effective and efficient. And that could be maybe in February or March. So we'll be working on that. But Member Ward also has suggested that we look at potentially a monthly or a quarterly kind of town hall meeting that we're inviting folks to, and just kind of have an open forum, but maybe not open forum. That's the type of thing that I think maybe we can talk through. If you have expectations about these kind of town hall meetings that are outside of our council meetings, then maybe I'm just putting the bug in your ear that we could talk about that more thoroughly, either at a study session, but we can also make that part of the retreat if you like. And I think that that's all I've got. Glad to answer any questions that council may have of me.
No, I don't think any questions. How long are we expecting to be here on Wednesday night? Are we expecting 2-3 hours or?
Yes, our agenda, it's actually on the agenda, the time frames for each of the topics. I think it's 3 hours.
3 hours? Okay. Wanted to know. All right.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Any other questions for city manager? Go ahead, Member Wright.
I'm sorry. So for these boards and commissions, when do we start? Is that January or immediately or?
Good question. We didn't
That's a
cover that aspect.
resolution, right? Or
Do
we gotta pass it.
do we do that by resolution? The liaisons?
I think so.
Okay, so it may not be until January, Member Wright, so.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if they all meet here in the month of.
Well, and considering start holidays. and
December, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll do it by resolution, so, yeah, we'll hold off until January
Okay.
for those to take
perfect.
place.
Clerk's office does not think we do that as a resolution.
Oh, no? Okay. Go ahead,
She's
Member
not
Ward.
remembering that.
Yeah, I just had a couple of things that I mentioned to the manager
I'm
in my
sorry,
last
go ahead.
one-on-one that I just thought of after Member Wright's question. But I'd like them to go in the holding area for future study sessions so that they don't get lost in the shuffle. One of them is in regards to vacant buildings and empty storefronts. I've talked to the manager and the attorney about this, and I think we would probably start that process with a study session. The other is in regards to the contract with Denver Fire. And that's coming up for its 10-year review. But there are some discussions we may have in the meantime. So, thank you.
Thank you, Member Ward. All right, yeah, so we'll have that holding area for study sessions, so thank you for that. All right, and with that, everyone, we are now adjourned. Everyone have a great evening. We'll see you on Wednesday. Have a good night.